Anybody, anywhere,
It's time to take command.
The Cardiac Commanders are the Clutch Commanders!
With former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen.
This pass caught by Paulsen, the tight end.
And from 106.7 The Fan, Grant Paulsen.
This is Take Command. Thank you for finding us. Wherever you get your audio, download this podcast, subscribe, rate, and review. Help us grow this thing. We are trying to build it bigger and bigger as the season goes on. Logan Paulsen played a decade in the NFL as a tight end. I'm Grant Paulsen. I host a daily show with Danny Rouillet on 106.7 The Fan. We'll be here 3 times per week. We give you a preview podcast mid to late week, looking ahead to the opponent after Logan watches the film. We give you a post-game breakdown immediately after the game on Sundays or whenever the Commanders play, and we give you a post-mortem convo or a victory convo after a game. We've had both of those this year after Logan watches the tape early in the week. So you get 3 per week. Make sure you keep coming back to Take Command. Logan, I'm excited for a home Sunday game against a rare foe. Washington has not had the Raiders in town in Landover at Northwest Stadium since 2017. This is a once every 8-year situation. Bring on the Raiders on short rest.
Yeah, kind of a fun matchup. You know, I grew up in LA, so kind of a low-key Raiders fan when I was growing up because they were in Oakland. That was kind of the local team we get on TV all the time. But yeah, man, great opportunity, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun to kind of talk about this game, some of the matchups, and hopefully a Washington dub in a couple of days here. So
we're similar in age. I'm 37 now. How old are you?
Oh, I'm 38. Yeah.
Okay, so your Raiders team would have been what, like the Rich Gannon Raiders with like Jerry Porter and Jerry Rice and Tim Brown. That team was fire. That was a Bill Callahan operation that made the Super Bowl.
Yeah, really fun group to watch, kind of like this high-powered, kind of pass first. They had this really dynamic, big offensive line that could pass pro at a high level. They had Charlie Garner out of the backfield, who was kind of that first scat back, kind of Marshall Faulk light type of guy. And Tyrone Wheatley getting downhill with the neck roll, weighing 250 pounds. And Guy Ritchie, the other fullback, who was 265.
Guy Ritchie, I think, is like an actor in a lot of like
the director. What was the fullback's name? It was
director.
Ritchie something, right?
John Ritchie,
the
former Eagles dude who was always bleeding.
Yes, that guy.
Guy Ritchie does a lot of like British movies with guns and stuff.
Yeah, like Snatch, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. The Gentleman, he did that. Yeah, big fan.
But also a fullback for the Raiders. Very versatile talent he is.
Very versatile skill set.
I was at that Super Bowl, Qualcomm Stadium in San Diego, Raiders-Bucks, where they got blown out by Tampa Bay. But I love that group too. Yeah, you sleep on Charlie Garner, who was one of the original, like, great pass-catching running backs.
I just brought Charlie Garner up, dude. What are you talking about? I sleep on him. You were like Joey Porter, Jerry Rice. You were talking about the receivers. I was like, first guy I said, Charlie Garner. I was like,
I was shocked by that. But he was silly, wearing number 25 out of the backfield. Yeah. I got sized for Charlie Garner. True story, and then we could start the actual show. For that Super Bowl, I was working for ABC Sports as like a young kid on their pregame show for the Super Bowl. And one of the things I got to do was they used to have this, like, what they called game before the game, where 2 players played Madden against each other to like predict the Super Bowl.
Sick.
And for 8 or 9 years in a row, it was that actual outcome was exactly the same as the game. But in that Super Bowl, I went and hosted that event, and Charlie Garner was one of the guys against Keenan McCardell, I think it was, who played in the Madden game. So I hung out with Charlie Garner for the night. He was silly.
That's odd, dude. That's a great story, man. I forgot how, like, I don't forget, but it's always a good reminder to remember how locked in you were as a young man, how professional and exposed you were to the entire NFL scene. Like, you've seen a lot. You've got some probably good war stories, I would think.
Some fun stories. Yeah, it's really not important to remember. Nobody cares at all. Trust me. Like, very few people.
I care.
Well, thank you. That's sweet of you. I care about Sunday, so let's talk about it. So here's how this is we're going to lay this out. So Logan watched the tape. We're going to go Raiders offense against Washington's defense this segment. We'll have the Raiders defense against the Commanders next segment, and then we will get into some kind of burning questions, including Jaden Daniels' health and how much they should push him at the end of the podcast. That'll obviously come up when we talk about the Commanders offense as well. But let's just start with the Raiders. Most of us got to watch them in great detail on Monday Night Football. It was an ugly game for Geno with 3 interceptions. One wasn't his fault. Held the ball a ton. One thing that stood out to me is they could get nothing going on the ground again. This is the 31st ranked rushing offense in the league right now, averaging sub 3 yards per carry, despite drafting Ashton Genty in the top 10. And Geno Smith has been really, really struggling throwing the ball down the field. 9 of 26 passes, 10-plus air yards, 219 yards with a touchdown, and a league-high 4 interceptions this season on anything longer than 10 yards, and it was a real struggle on Monday night.
Yeah, so let's talk about, there's 2 things there. Want to start with the run game? And we'll get back to Geno. Let's start with the run game. So I think both of these problems are kind of encapsulated in what I would characterize. This is going to sound mean, but I don't mean it to be in a mean way. This is like, it feels like a very college-y offense, right? It's like the spacing, the formations, the distribution, all feels very college-y. So one of the things in college is like you have these wider hash marks, right? We were just talking about it actually for high school football before we got on the show. You have these wider hash marks. So when you run your RPOs, when you run your little bubble screen precept stuff, when you run that seam that gets picked off against the Chargers, for example, right? That works when you're in college, when you're on the left hash and the safety has to cover all this ground to kind of get over top of the 3 receiver set. Here, because of the formation, because of the hash marks, the safeties have to cover less ground. The linebackers don't have to displace as far for the RPO. So when you're running your kind of, here's your 2 tight end set duo, and we're going to release and we're going to read this backside hook player. In college, that works really well because that guy's displaced like 4 yards farther than he is in the NFL. So you're running, and then that guy's unblocked, and he ends up making the tackle because not only is he closer, but guys in the NFL, linebackers specifically, secondary players, strong safeties, hook players are way, way faster. So I do think there's this simplistic element to the run game. You look at really well-designed run games in the NFL. I think you look at Green Bay, you look at San Francisco is a good example. Freaking Baltimore does a great job in terms of creating good angles with formation, with receivers. There's not a lot of that going on. You could tell that Chip Kelly really wants to rely on the RPO to create and distribute the field and create space, but it's not distributing the same way that it was when he was at Ohio State last year. So I think you get some really tough matchups in the run game in terms of angles on combinations, and you get a lot of free runners because you're not getting the same displacement because of RPO. So as a result, Ashton Genty's getting hit in the backfield a lot. I think he's doing a good job getting back to like square run. You see to square one, you see his talent as a runner, his physicality as a runner, his balance as a runner. But again, like he can't overcome kind of the scheme. And I think the offensive line is just okay when you watch him on film.
Yeah, just some numbers for this running game. 2.8 per play, 62 yards overall per game so far. And what's amazing is this is Pete Carroll, man. You know, this is Chip Kelly, right? As you said. Now, Chip was in college before this, and he's gone back and forth between college and the pros, and he's going to run his offense. But I've been interested in several things that look nothing like a Pete Carroll offense, frankly. I mean, when you look at how the Raiders have lined up, like they've been in more bunch formations than anybody else in the NFL. In week 1, they were in bunch formations a quarter of the time against the Patriots. And like, that's a Chip Kelly staple. When you go back and watch the end of Pete Carroll in Seattle, that was not something they did a lot of. So it kind of feels like he's letting Chip Kelly do his thing a little bit unchecked. And I wonder how long that goes, Logan, if they don't have results before he kind of says, okay, what if we did this more? Because this does not look like a Pete Carroll offense to me, which generally has been very accustomed to running the football effectively. You know, Pete Carroll wants to chew bubble gum and run the football, and he doesn't have any bubble gum.
And he can't run the football, obviously, either. So kind of a tough situation at the moment.
Not in a good spot.
And it's interesting, like you mentioned the bunch statistic there. Like when you watch them, they're not in fully displaced like trips, for example. They are in a little bit condensed, but it doesn't feel like a tight bunch when you watch the film. And so I think that's the other thing is it's just, even on like the route distributions and stuff, it's very vertical into the defense. There's not a lot of cross releases. The timing and the spacing, it feels like college stuff in the sense where you don't get like these spray releases. You're not stressing hook players. It's vertical, get to your spot. And again, in college, it works because you have 5 more yards of grass that the defense has to defend over there. Here, the throwing windows are so much tighter. So I do think I think Chip Kelly will figure it out at some point. I think they'll find a way to get a little bit more nuanced, a little bit more varied in terms of the run game that they're calling and how they get to some of their pass concepts, how they distribute the RPO stuff. But right now, man, like it's tough. It's tough for the backs to find a lot of air because, like I said, it's not only the RPO stuff doesn't have a lot of grass. It's the combinations on the offensive line. Like when you get in these kind of further, like these wider splits from the offensive linemen, the receivers can't really get into the blocking surface the same way. And they do have plays where the receivers get in the blocking surface. But now if I'm running duo, the combination is really vertical. Those vertical combinations in the NFL are really, really hard. You're not at Ohio State anymore where the guys you have are just better than the people across from you. You need to figure out ways to create angles, to create matchups. And just right now, he's not doing that. So there's a ton of penetration. Do you have the average yards before contact anywhere over there, Grant? Because
I can find it.
Because that, to me, when you watch the film, you're like, man, these guys are going to hit the backfield a lot. And
one thing that's related to that I was going to bring up that I did scribble down here is Genty's forced more missed tackles than any running back. Now, most of those, just from watching, I would say, were at the line or behind the line. But in week 1, as an example, he had 5 missed tackles forced, which was the most of any back in the league, on just 19 carries. It was like 28% missed tackles forced rate, which outpaced the Raiders from last season considerably. They were like at 18%. So even though he has not performed well statistically, and I watch him, and he had a play last week, I'm sure you saw, where he ran into a puller. He had a play last week where Pass Pro has been a mess, by the way. Like there's some circulating viral videos of him just getting completely outclassed in pass protection. And there's a few things where he misses a hole or whatever. Like when he has the football, he's hard to tackle. His balance is unbelievable. And he does make people miss to what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think some of that stuff, like when he runs into the puller, like the front side, again, I watched the front side tight end. He gets blown up in the backfield by that number 45 from LA, from the Chargers. Creates a big pile. The puller has to bubble back. There's really nowhere for him to go because penetration kills gap scheme runs because of that exact reason. If the puller gets pushed off, then the back has nowhere to go. So I think, yes, are there some things Ashton Genty could be doing better? 100%. But I think the style of runs that they get to, how they disperse those runs, people that they have in the blocking surface, like when you're watching film, you can feel, like they're going to try and run the ball here, or they're going to try and pass the ball here, they're going to try and run. The formation kind of contracts and expands based on what they're trying to do offensively. So, again, I think that's one of the reasons they're having a hard time in the run. And then again, like they have an okay offensive line, but it's not a great offensive line. And I think that's another thing that sticks out is like, there are certain systems that can hide offensive line play. Like I think back to my time here in 2012, like when we're running a lot of outside zone, we're running a lot of zone read, it hides some of the deficiencies of the group. I feel like this scheme right now exacerbates some of the issues that this offensive line has. And I think, and again, like I think Chip Kelly figures it out, but they need to. There's a lot of work to make this group a little bit more efficient offensively.
Yeah. So it sounds to me like you're thinking this could be a decent day for the defensive front, which I want to get into. But one of the things kind of on my mind that I want to ask you about is their tackles. Their tackles have allowed in tandem the second highest pressure count in the NFL so far. And you just referenced some of the run game issues that they're having as well. I mean, is this a game where if you're Joe Witt, you're in the meeting room telling Daron Payne and Javon Kinlaw and Dorrance Armstrong, like, we got to win up front. There's no reason we can't take this game over against this offensive line. By the way, we're unsure about the status in a short week of Jackson Powers Johnson, their second-round pick and starting right guard from last year as well.
And he's one of their better players, honestly. Like, he's a big, strong, powerful dude, and he really fires off the ball and is able to kind of win some of these matchups that some of the other guys can't win. But I think the pressure rate's probably really high for the tackles because Geno Smith likes to hold the football. He likes to make plays downfield. So to me, it's like, let's keep them struggling offensively. They're not going to stress us. Like, so for example, like when you watch the Green Bay game, there's a lot of eye discipline stress, right? We've got, we're selling tight zone to the right with an orbit motion to the back. We can pish off an unblocked defensive end. They're testing your rules every single time they're handing off. And it's not every single time because sometimes they're running straight power. Sometimes they're running outside zone, whatever it is. I'm talking Green Bay. But they had every third play kind of this unusual backfield set that is going to kind of create space in the defense. Here it's like, we're going to line up. We're going to run our run. We're going to line up. We're going to run our RPO. We're going to line up. We're going to take a play action shot. And I think that's the thing that if it's not going to stress you mentally in the front, let's play fast and physical Commanders football. Like last week, I think was a tough game on a short week because of all the diversity that Green Bay presented. Here, not so much diversity, not so much nuance, not the same kind of motions and shifts and things that are going to be problematic. Now, maybe Chip looks at what Green Bay did and said, hey, we can run a lot of that stuff, and you see more of that. But through the first two games, I have not seen that element to their offense.
Is that acceptable in 2025 to not have the eye candy and all the movement and make a defense think? I mean, I guess it works if you just run your stuff really well and you execute. You don't have to get cute with it. But isn't the idea, like you think about San Francisco and Miami when they're at the peak of their powers, like testing rules and making people think? To not do that now seems like you're just not giving yourself, you're lowering your ceiling.
Yeah, I mean, I think a good example of a team that doesn't do a lot of that is Philadelphia. But Philadelphia is built in a different way. They have the best offensive line in football. They have the best back in football. They have two of the best receivers in football. When you are better, like just from a personnel standpoint, you can do stuff like that, right? You don't, traditionally Philadelphia has one of the lowest motion rates in the NFL. I think last year they were like 31st in the league in terms of pre-snap motion because they're just better than you. This team, obviously the Las Vegas Raiders, they are not better than you. So I do think there needs to be an element added where they're kind of moving pieces around and doing some different stuff to kind of put their guys in better positions to be successful. That's just my 1,000-foot view of the offense. And it does feel to me on both sides of the ball that they are in year one of an install. And so what I mean by that is when you watch Green Bay, you can see the plays starting to come to life because those guys have been in the system for 3 or 4 years. And I always bring this up on this show, but Kyle Shanahan used to say, like, it takes 3 years to learn and install an offense. And what does that mean? It's like, hey, when I'm running CO to the offensive right here, I need, as a tight end, to widen my split a little bit. So
tell people what CO is.
CO is a corner by the guy on the ball and an out by the tight end or the player off the ball. So I need to widen my split so I can get in the jet stream of the corner, and the corner needs to make sure he's going to get a nice rub for me when I run this route. So those details take time to facilitate and come to life. And so when I watch their offense, I feel like there's a little bit of that going on where it's like, hey, this is the play as it's drawn on paper, but it isn't coming to life yet for the people on the field. And they are wickedly talented. Like, don't get it twisted. They have a lot of speed on the perimeter. They've got a baller at tight end. We just talked about Ashton Genty. I think he's a good football player. And I think Geno Smith can absolutely rip the football. Like, I had to do a cut up for the Command Center show this week, and I was like, man, Geno Smith has a live arm. He's confident with ball placement. Like, he can elevate you. But the problem is, like, everybody's still learning the spacing, the positioning, what Geno wants, all those types of things. And I think that's something that they can figure out, no doubt. And hopefully it's not this week, but they haven't figured out so far this season.
Well, I want to get into Brock Bowers, who's their best weapon and an elite player. We're talking about an all-pro, maybe future Hall of Fame type tight end who's banged up. But real quick on Geno, is he struggling as bad as it looks? I mean, he's 21st in completion percentage over expected right now. He's completing a lower percent than he should be by almost 2% of his passes. The 4 interceptions leads the NFL, 3 this week. I know 1 wasn't his fault. What did you see from him when you watched the tape of these 2 games?
I'm really glad you brought that up because, like, one of the things they do is they want to push this football down the field. They've got Tyquan Thornton. Is it Tyquan Thornton? Yeah, yes. Dante Thornton. Excuse me. Tyquan plays for Kansas City. Dante Thornton, the guy from Tennessee, he's 4th-round pick. He's a 4.3 guy. He's 6'5". He's 215.
They just drafted him in the 4th round, by the way. He can go. He
can absolutely scoot. And they've got Trey Tucker. I think he's from Nebraska, if I'm not mistaken. But, yeah, another kind of 4.3-ish type guy. And they can roll, man. They can absolutely get down the football field. And so you're watching this game against the Chargers, and they're running what I would call like a post-high cross concept. And they're just banking on you getting down the field. They've got both tight ends in protection. The back stays in pro. It's a max protection look. And the Chargers are in cover 4. And so they're just getting back deep. The backside quarters player cuts the crosser. There's no air in the coverage. And so they're relying on these explosive shot plays down the field with these fast receivers. But quite honestly, because they weren't efficient running the football on 1st down or whatever it is, they're in 2nd and 7. They play this match Vic Fangio coverage, and there's nowhere to go with the football. And so you're asking Geno Smith to elevate this concept when there's literally no air in it. So there's a couple times where he's trying to it was the interception to Trey Tucker actually, where he's running a seam. It's the only place to go with the football. It is this quarter structure. He rips a laser beam in there, and it's the tightest window throw you could possibly ask, but there's just nowhere else to go with the football. And you want him to take a sack, you want him to throw that away. I think you got to give credit to the Chargers here too in terms of how they played coverage, because it made some of these throws impossible. He's trying to take a shot to Tyquan Thornton down the sideline. He throws it up. There's Tyquan Thornton's trying to run a go on a guy who's 12 yards off, or Dante Thornton trying to run a go on a guy who's 12 to 14 yards off the ball backing up. I don't care how fast you're not going to get by him. So there was a lot of that stuff going on. So to me, it felt like a very lacking game plan in terms of maximizing what their skill set of playmakers could do versus this match quarters that they like to run in San Diego or in LA, excuse me.
Well, let's talk Brock Bowers. He is not 100%. He was wearing a big, bulky knee brace. You could even see when he was going in motion a couple of times where he's hobbled. His gait's not normal.
Yeah.
But he did end up catching 5 balls, mostly underneath, nothing overly prolific or dynamic. But when he's right, and I don't know if he will be on Sunday or not with some short week rest here, this is one of the best players in the league at his position. Last year, Logan, 112 catches, was the third most in the history of the league by a tight end in a single season. And that was his rookie year. But Ertz caught 116 in 2018. Evan Ingram caught 114 balls and averaged 2 yards a catch, I think, for Jacksonville back in just 2023. But Bowers catching 112 balls for almost 1,200 yards last year. This is a future Hall of Fame tight end. What makes him so special? You've studied him, I know, closely over a few years now.
Yeah, I mean, it's the athlete that he is, and his dexterity as a receiver. So that is one thing I like about what Chip Kelly's doing is the way they're using Brock Bowers. They're kind of lining him up at receiver, which I don't love doing that all the time because you're going to draw a better coverage matchup. I want him in the blocking surface as much as possible because then you got safeties, you got linebackers on him, but I like that they're trying to feature him as the mainstay of the offense. They ran this little kind of check wheel that he ran against New England, and his ability to kind of open his hip, adjust the football, track, catch the ball, get 2 feet down. In the New England game, he's got a little choice route that he runs where he breaks across, catches the football over the middle of the field, and then runs away from a DB. I don't know what his 40 time is. I don't know if he ever ran a 40, but he's got kind of game-breaking ability, which you saw when he was at the University of Georgia. So it's the route running nuance, it's the yards after the catch. I think that's probably his superpower, the yards after the catch, his ability to adjust the football in the air. And then he's pretty physically tough. He's not going to kill anybody in the run game, but he's definitely not going to turn it down. So I think that's where he feels like, most teams have a number one receiver. He feels like the number one receiver for this offense. So that could be another reason why the offense feels so stagnant or felt so stagnant versus the LA Chargers, is because your number one player is banged up and isn't bringing kind of the offensive flexibility that you're expecting from him.
Yeah, Bowers less yak in the Chargers game with the banged up knee, but 55 yards in week 1 led the team. Jacoby Myers, who we haven't mentioned, had 42 yards. He'd be the last guy that I would point out. In terms of the prolific weapons, it's Bowers at tight end. It's Genty if you give him a crease. At running back, he can hit a home run. Jacoby Myers is their war daddy kind of underneath. He's the guy it's third and Myers, basically. The other guys are more speed, taking the lid off. Anything else you want to address here for the Raiders offense and the Commanders defense?
Yeah, I mean, this just feels like, if they keep playing the way they played the first 2 weeks, I'm talking about Las Vegas, I think this feels like a great opportunity to play into exactly what Joe Witt Jr. wants to do. We talked about how Green Bay wasn't a great matchup on a short week with all the diversity they present. This feels like one that's much more going to be a little bit easier to kind of play in terms of this press man style, and stopping the run. I think it's going to be a little bit easier because I think those matchups on the interior, specifically for Duran and Kinlaw, will be better. So we'll see if on a short week, Chip Kelly changes kind of what they're doing and has a little perspective shift here. But if they keep doing what they did in week 1 and week 2, I think this is going to be a good matchup for the Commanders.
In our third segment, our burning questions for Logan going into this game. I'm going to ask you about Frankie Louvu, how he's playing through 2 games, and then also Preston Smith, your former teammate, is coming back to D.C., signing with the team today. How could he help them? That's coming up on Take Command. Let's get into the Washington offense next and the Raiders defense that they're going to be dealing with. You are listening to Logan Paulsen and Grant Paulsen on Take Command. This is Take Command, available wherever you get your audio. Logan Paulsen, a decade-long NFL player, breaks the tape down better than anybody alongside. I'm Grant Paulsen. You can listen to me on 106.7 The Fan, 2 to 6:30 every day. 106.7 The Fan and Team 980 YouTube streams are where you can watch this show in high definition. All right, let's get to the Commanders' defense coming off of a game where the Commanders' offense, rather, coming off of a game where they suffered some key injuries. Austin Eckler, Logan, is out for the season at running back. They'll move on without him. At wide receiver, Noah Brown is injured. We're not sure about his status. At tight end, John Bates is injured. It does not sound like, as of right now, he's expected to go this week, but that's still up in the air. And most importantly, Jaden Daniels, dealing with some type of knee sprain, according to Ian Rappaport, is also in question going into the midweek practices ahead for the Commanders. So on a week like this, even though you've had extra rest, but so many guys missing practice time, a lot of injuries to deal with. What's that like in the building as you try to align yourself for a game and get good work in despite so many moving parts?
Yeah, I think there's, as a player, like if you're backing up one of these injured players or guys that are out for the year, this is a great opportunity. And so it's kind of your opportunity to kind of put your resume on the table. I mean, something similar happened to me in 2012 when Fred Davis tore his Achilles, and I was supposed to be the third kind of special teams tight end. And Fred tore his Achilles against the Giants, and I had to play the rest of the season. And it was a great opportunity because afterwards I got a nice little contract extension and really kind of helped me kind of parlay my career into what it was, which is that 10-year, even though I was floating around, I got to play and be a part of a NFL organization for a long time because of that injury and how I handled being ready for that injury. And so as much as that is hard, this is a great opportunity for some guys. I think as a coach, you kind of got to think about now with these key pieces out, how do we maximize our offense? Like, what is our offensive identity now become with Noah Brown banged up, with John Bates banged up? Like, how do we replace a skill set at tight end that nobody else in that room seems to have? Do we put, Wiley there at tackle or Trent Scott at tight end, kind of that big tight end piece that is going to give us some more physicality on first and second down? Or do we say, hey, we want to go two backs and kind of use that misdirection in the backfield to set up stuff for us in the run game to create good angles? So I think that's going to be really interesting to see how Cliff and the staff handle some of these injuries.
What would you do?
I think I'd probably think a combination of things, right? Quite frankly, like with John Bates specifically, like I look at Buffalo, I think it's a really good example. All the success they've had bringing a sixth offensive lineman onto the field, how it's helped them in the run game, how it's helped them from a play action pass standpoint. And I'd probably draw from some of what they do and see if there's some crossover where we say, hey, we got Wiley in here, for our counters, our powers, our outside zone, some play pass stuff. And then the other thing, that I don't negotiate as well is how do you handle Wiley in tempo situations if he is, or that extra offensive lineman on the field in tempo situations. So that's an interesting problem to solve. But again, there's probably an element of that big offensive lineman there, the big 12 or big 11 personnel. And then I think, probably some combination of backs, because losing Noah Brown to me for this week seems like a really sneaky one because the receiver depth isn't great. So what do you do in 11? Who's your third element? Do you move Debo outside, Terry's outside, then Jalen Lane kind of fills in that slot role? Does that hurt your flexibility offensively? If so, then let's bring another back in. Can we get some stuff there that presents different looks? And then another thing I'd kind of lean on is the quarterback run situation. But again, if Jaden Daniels is hurt, how much do you want to lean into that this week? So lots of problems to solve, but I think I'd probably use a combination of things to get it done. And then, again, the thing that I'm not considering is like, how does that implement in Cliff's offense where tempo is such a big weapon that they like to utilize on the week?
Could they not just elevate and play Chris Moore in that Noah Brown role?
I think that's exactly what they're going to do, some version of that. But like you're offsetting production. Like I feel like Jaden Daniels has a really good relationship with Noah Brown and trusts him a lot. And I'm not sure he has that same type of connection with Noah Brown. So do you find ways to feature Terry more? Do you find ways to feature Debo more? I do think more will be available, but I do think there's a slight drop off in production from Noah Brown to more, at least through this training camp cycle.
Sure, there's no doubt about that. Noah last year kind of established himself as the clear wideout too, and now with Debo here, he's kind of next in line after Terry McLaurin and Debo Samuel. So let's start with Jaden Daniels, then go back to the quarterback. That's the big story of the week. It sounds like you are open to the possibility, even if he's not 100%, of playing him. So what does that look like? I mean, for me, I don't expect him to play just personally, but if he was going to, we don't know yet. I'd like to think he'd just keep him in the pocket, no designed runs. The problem therein is they didn't have a designed run against the Packers, and he ran 7 times. He scrambles more than anybody in the NFL statistically. Last year, he had 600 scramble yards, most in football. He also gets contacted, hit in the pocket, and tackled more than anybody in the league. Mina Kimes did a breakdown of this on ESPN where he led the NFL last year in plays contacted. He's already leading the NFL this year in the same stat. So if he plays, I think there's kind of one gear for him. And I would protect him from himself a little bit. And in week 3 of a marathon, just say, hey, man, we've been sitting around for 10 days. These guys played on Monday night and are flying cross country. Mariota hung 40 on Carolina and lit up the Cowboys in the second half last year. We got you covered for a week. We'll see you next week in Atlanta. You don't think it's that simple?
I don't think it's that simple. I do think that you got to kind of gauge the injury. Like maybe it's not a big deal. Maybe he feels fine. Like we're going to go to practice today. Maybe you can't even, there's no discernible limp. Maybe there's no issue and he feels great. Like, so we got to kind of, they have all the information. We're kind of speculating at the moment, but I do think it's player dependent. It's injury dependent. It's and how the player responds to the injury. It's a bunch of different factors. And that's how every injury that I was exposed to in the NFL was handled. And I'm assuming they're going to handle this one the same way because again, like if he's good to go, like why wouldn't you have him go? And I do think that this week versus this Raiders defense, I do think it presents a really cool opportunity for him to get back on track as a runner and as a thrower. Like when you watch them on film, like I mentioned, there's some things with the Raider offense that gives me confidence that defensively they'll be able to get back on track. I think when you look at this Las Vegas defense, you kind of say, there's a little bit more space. They're not quite as good in their match situations. In their cover 3, there's a lot of air at the second level. The hook players don't get enough depth. When it's man, and they're playing this kind of match man principle, the people on the hooks and the flats are really aggressive to get out of there, leaving these nice big throwing windows on the inside. And then when they do play zone, they get a lot of depth. And I think you just don't have to look any farther than Josh Herbert on Monday night to see like it bodes well for scrambling quarterbacks. And I think Josh Herbert's a great athlete.
Justin Herbert,
yes, thank you. Justin Herbert is a great athlete, but I think Jaden Daniels is a more prolific, more effective scrambler. So I think getting him in this game would feed exactly into his skill set. And I think it would just be such a great opportunity to get this offense.
Let me ask you this, though. Just play devil's advocate and assume that he doesn't play. Kind of, you're talking about if he does.
Yeah.
Doesn't all that still apply for Marcus Mariota? I mean,
Absolutely.
When we saw him, he was ripping off long runs against Dallas. He's super effective in read option. It seems like they feel okay about the Achilles because they didn't dress a third quarterback in either game. I mean, I feel like they can still accomplish a lot of that without any added risk to Jaden Daniels.
Absolutely. But if Jaden Daniels is fine, quote unquote, then let him play.
And let me drill down on that. When you say if he's good to go or fine, what does that mean exactly? Because he sprained his knee. Like we know that, right? So
but what does that mean though? You know what I mean? Like a knee sprain is so ambiguous in terms of dialogue, right? If it was an MCL sprain, then it's damage specifically to the MCL. If it's a PCL sprain, it's damage to the PCL. If he tweaked his meniscus, it's meniscus. A knee sprain, is it general knee soreness? Is it hyperextension? Like, because hyperextension, like that happens in practice all the time and people don't even miss a day of practice, right? So like, what is I think the language here is intentionally vague to make sure that Las Vegas has to now prep for both quarterbacks. Like that's probably on purpose to a certain extent. And we'll see. Maybe it's very significant. Maybe he's not going to practice today. And then obviously this conversation changes in terms of tone and tenor moving forward in the Las Vegas game.
But what would be your threshold if you're like the head coach of letting him play? Is it just he's completely 100% healthy? He's 90% and telling you I'm fine and wrapping it up? Like, because it sounds like I'm way more conservative than you are, but I'm going, it's week 3, bro. This is a marathon. Like, I need you to be awesome the rest of the year. If you're not and oh, by the way, there is no world. Everyone's like, well, just have him stand in the pocket and win. He could do that 100%. I mean, he's a great passer, but he scrambles more than anybody. I just think when you put guys out there, they become themselves. Like they got a chip that's wired over 20 years of playing football. So I'm more in line of just like protecting guys from themselves based on my own past experiences around these parts. But like, are you more in like listening to the player? Like how do you come at it from there?
I think you got to listen to the player, you got to listen to the training staff, and you got to trust your own eye. Like, so a good example of this is I played for Dan in 2017, and I tore my MCL versus Baltimore, and I was hell bent on playing. I was going to play that week. I wasn't going to miss any time. I never really missed any significant time due to injury. I'd played with an MCL sprain before. Like, I was ready to go. And I got out to practice, and I thought I was moving around okay. It hurt like hell, but like I thought, I'll be ready to go. Like, we'll figure this thing out. And then Dan, the trainer, was like, I think, yeah, you're looking okay, whatever. And then Dan came up to me on like Thursday and was like, hey, man, just so you know, you're not going to play this weekend. And I was like, what the hell? Like, I'm ready to go. This is going to happen. And the trainer was like standing there with me and kind of like looking all sheepish because he probably knew already. And Dan was like, dude, like, I'm watching the film. I'm watching you. Like, you're doing a good job. You're getting back where we need you to get. But I don't think you're ready to go. And so I didn't play. And I think that's like what good coaches and good trainers have to do. They have to have a discerning eye, because like there are other times where, like for example, when I was here and I played, I think it was like, 10, 11 games with a torn MCL. Mike did this. It was the same interaction with Mike Shanahan. He came and looked at me, said, I think you're okay. Trainer said, I think you're okay. I thought I was okay. And I played the rest of the year and I had really no issue. It hurt, but I was okay. So I think there's a conversation that needs to be had, right? I mentioned this on the last show we did, like London Fletcher's ankle didn't work the whole of 2013. Didn't work at all, but he played and was fine and like was happy to do it. And the trainers, the coaches all had a conversation around it. And so there's levels to this. Now, obviously, if the MRI revealed something that was really deleterious or very damaging, then he's not going to play regardless of what he says. But if it's something that we, as the training staff, have experience with, we trust the player, we trust the coach, I trust the trainer's eye. They've done a great job of this throughout this offseason process of being very fastidious with getting players back to return to play. Like, I'm going to trust all the information when I'm making my decision.
Logan Paulsen, Grant Paulsen, take command. All right, a few other things on offense we can go rapid fire here through. No Austin Eckler, so Rodriguez gets activated. He'll play for the first time. Here's my guess. Tell me what I'm getting wrong. I think you're going to see a lot of Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt first and second down. I think you're going to see more Jeremy McNichols maybe than people nationally think, and filling in for Austin Eckler, pass pro, 2-minute, 4-minute, pass catching back kind of deal. And then you're going to see Rodriguez in what was the McNichols role the last couple of weeks, salting the game away against the Giants, some of that shorter yardage stuff. What am I missing?
I think that's 100% right. I think that's exactly what I would say. I think you've seen enough talented upside ability from Bill Krosky-Merritt on first, second down. He deserves more target share, touch share. You can tell based on Dan Quinn's comments in the presser, they want to kind of make an emphasis to be a little bit more balanced, run the football a little bit more. He seems like the perfect guy to keep you on schedule. If he gets tired, I'd probably throw in Rodriguez because, again, he just did such a good job in the preseason. And obviously McNichols in kind of the third down pass protection role feels like a perfect fit because he's excellent at that. So I think you've got three guys, and I think the aggregate of them can offset the loss of Eckler, but you got to make sure you're using them in the right spot. And then don't forget about Deebo Samuels for some of those explosive screens, reverses that made Austin Eckler so dangerous and made him such an asset to this offense.
There's been a lot made about Terry McLaurin having just 75 yards through 2 games. I would point out that's more yards than he had through 2 games last year when he got off to a slow start. Everyone's trying to make this about the summer, and maybe that's certainly a factor. When you watched, you said you saw some space and some things that can be exploited. Feels like maybe you think there's going to be some opportunities for McLaurin, maybe Deebo Samuel, middle of the field on some of those deep overs and things against this Raiders team based on how they play.
Yeah, I think so. I think this would be a really good opportunity. I think that, again, they're learning. They're learning the detail of the defense. I think it's a good defense. I think in principle, it works, right? But when I see them kind of doing certain things that, to me, like when you compare them to the LA Chargers, the Chargers do such a good job of distributing the middle half of the second level of the defense, getting under stuff, not rallying to the stuff underneath. With the Raiders, you see a little bit of that stuff, which is kind of considered like bad defense or not ideal defensive principles. So that's going to improve as the year goes on, no doubt. but I'm like, man, there's a lot of space in there. If you can hold up against the pass rush, Max Crosby specifically, they're going to give you shots down the field. And I think you saw that when New England played them, and I think you also saw that in the Chargers game. And I'm not to say they're not a good defense. They do make explosive plays. They're physical. They're fast. But I do see holes at the second level that I think can be exploited.
All right, and then the last one on offense, and we were remiss if I didn't ask you about Josh Connerly. He has given up the most pressures in the NFL through 2 games. We talked after the Green Bay game. I know the tape you thought was maybe a little bit more encouraging than a lot of people are making it out to be. So he's now got Max Crosby. I mean, this poor guy has dealt with as a rookie debuting tackle on a side he's never played. He's got to deal with Brian Burns, week 1. Good luck. Micah Parsons, week 2. He may win the DPOY award. Max Crosby has been a runner-up and in the conversation the last few years. I talked to Jay Gruden this week on Grant and Danny. He said he would actually go to Andrew Wiley and have a nice conversation with Connerly where he basically said, listen, man, I love you. You're my guy long-term. Quick reset. We'll see you in a week or 2. And you just give Wiley an opportunity just so that he doesn't keep losing confidence with another rough matchup. Would you be okay with that? And what's your logic there?
I'd probably be okay with that if that's the decision that they wanted to go with. But for me, again, like in that game against Green Bay in the first matchup, I think you see enough good stuff, and I think you see enough confidence. If you're worried about his confidence, I think he strikes me, at least from his play style, as a very confident person. And so if you're okay making some mistakes and it's not going to kill our offense, like let's give it a shot, so either, I don't think there's a wrong answer here. I think if you want to put Wiley in, great. If Connerly can handle it, great. If you want to keep him playing, that's also fine too. I think compared to Micah Parsons specifically, this is going to be easier, right? And if you can manage the game flow the way you managed week 1, where we're staying efficient running the football, where we got a little bit more quick game, more screens, stuff to deleverage the offensive line, his exposures are going to be less. Like they had 56 dropbacks against Green Bay. Like that's a crazy number, right? That's a crazy number when you can just say, hey, I'm Micah Parsons. I might be Defensive Player of the Year, and I am just teeing off on your face down after down after down. Like I don't care who you are. Like you're not gonna come out of that one looking good. And so I think, again, Cliff did such a good job with last year of managing game flow, managing the stress on the offensive line. If he can get back to some of that stuff, I think that's going to be really impactful and help Josh Connerly a ton. So if you want to go with Wiley, great. If you want to stay with Connerly, I think there's an argument to be made for that, because I think, again, when I watch the film, I see a competitive dude who is getting better with each rep, and I think I want to see him play more football. But again, no wrong decision there.
Yeah, it's funny. That's what I love about doing this show with you is very measured and, presenting that other side when you watch it of let's help the guy too. I mean, week 1, they were able to help him more. He was not asked to basically be on an island and every single play, drop back and pass protect against Micah Parsons. So if you can run the ball, and obviously game script's going to be a determinant, which you can't necessarily control. But if the ideal situation comes along, and it should this week with the Raiders, where at worst you're in the football game within a possession or so, you should be able to be balanced and help him out. And that's on the staff, and that's on everybody else too. It's Countdown 2. He's Logan. I'm Grant. All right, some burning questions before we get out of here next on Take Command. Welcome back to Take Command. This pick segment is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Looking at some games this week, I like the San Francisco 49ers. I know Mac Jones is the quarterback, favored by 1.5 at home against Arizona. I like them to find a way to win that game by a field goal and cover the 1.5 point spread at -108 on FanDuel right now. Once again, that was the pick segment brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Logan, I don't know that you'll be surprised to know, in Kyle Shanahan's offense, Mac Jones, we liked enough to have been rumored as a possible number 3 overall pick at one point, had a banner game, lit it up, threw for almost 300 yards and a few touchdowns in his first start for Kyle.
Yeah, it feels like the perfect fit for that offense right now, just in terms of his ability to make decisions and facilitate, be that point guard and let Kyle scheme it up. And, it kind of reminds me of Brock Purdy when he first got to the offense. And it's just like, hey, man, be on time, be on schedule, use that lightning quick release and help us get into the right play pre-snap. Seems like a great fit.
All right, so there are some things we've got to cover here in the final segment, and we'll get Logan's final thoughts on the matchup from his film study. First, Preston Smith has been added. Can confirm that he has signed with the team today. He was drafted by Washington, spent 4 years with the Redskins before moving on to play for the Packers and eventually the Steelers. Now he's back with the Commanders, possibly to finish out his career or maybe prolong it with a strong run here. Dietrich Wise is out for the year. That's a lot of size you lost at the edge. We said that's hard to replace. Preston Smith is a big dude. You've gone against him in practices for many, many, many hours. How do you think he helps them as an edge setting, maybe run stuffer initially? He did have 8 sacks as recently as just a couple seasons ago.
Yeah, I think that's the thing about Preston is he is a big man. Like he's kind of that prototypical 35-inch arm length, tall, angular, 275, 280-pound guy. Like Dietrich is much more powerfully built, like much more dense, but don't get it twisted. Preston Smith is a big dude. So if you're looking for some size, some length on at the edge player as an edge, I think he fits that bill almost to a T. And like you said, he does have some pass rush upside. And, Dietrich Wise, one of the things I always liked about him when he was up in New England is he did have some pass rush upside also. It was always 5, 6, 7 type of sack kind of guy. But if that's the type of production you're looking for, I definitely think Preston Smith could deliver that. And again, offset some of the loss of Dietrich, right? So right now you have Jalen Holmes, you have Javonte Jean-Baptiste. I think both those guys, I'm excited to see what they can do, but now you just have a little bit more experience at the position with a guy who's done it for a long time at a high level.
As far as the underlying injuries, like take Daniels out of this thing, which gets all the headlines, who's the sneaky one they missed the most? I know you said you think this is like a game where it'd be great to have Noah Brown if he can play. Let's just assume these guys that are banged up don't go. And Noah Brown, John Bates, Eckler and Wise are out. Who's the guy you think sneaky they missed the most this week in this matchup?
To me, it's probably John Bates, because I don't know if there's anybody in the league that was playing as well as him at his position. And then on the roster, as a result, you don't have anybody that really fills that role at a super high level. And so now all of a sudden you got to get creative about, 2 backs. Do we go 12? Like, how do we use Ben if we're going to use him in move situations as opposed to in line? Maybe we go big offensive, big 12 with an offensive lineman. It just creates a kind of a snowball effect of schematic solves that you need to use as opposed to just plugging in a person.
All right, so you mentioned Ben Sinnott, who was a fringe top 50 pick last year. Like, it's not unreasonable to say, hey, man, year 2, let's get something going here. Let's do something. We noticed him. We caught a pass. So did Luke McCaffrey here in the early going now of this season. So it's good to see those guys on the field. But he's not John Bates. Like, they're different players.
Yeah.
You mentioned, like, you don't have a guy on this roster that can do the Bates thing. That's because there's only a handful of guys in the league maybe that can do the Bates thing. But, like, okay, so tight end's out potentially, and now Sinnott climbs the depth chart. What does this look like for him? And how should we expect him to be employed?
Yeah, I think that's going to be the interesting thing to watch is like, what do you do with him, right? Because one of the things about John is he's like 6'6.5". He's got 33.5-inch arms. Like, he's built like an offensive lineman. So like some of these defensive linemen, when I'm in line, I can reach them. I can get my hands on them. I can use my length and leverage to get them out of position. Bates is a little bit, by comparison, like shorter arms, shorter height. It's going to be harder for him to win those inline matchups. So the first thought that comes to mind is like, can you get him on the move? Can you get him like, on a motion to kick a guy out? Because he's actually pretty explosive and snappy through his hips, and he's strong through his torso. So that would be great. So if we're going to run duo, maybe I don't do it with him in line right over the end. I motion him to the position. He can kick that guy out, which is something that like Miami does quite a bit to kind of manage some of their tight end deficiencies in terms of blocking, right? And I think that could be an easy way to do that. If we're running counters, he's the lead guy. He does a great job with some of that insertion stuff. I think that'd be a great utilization for him in the run game. But as you can tell, like the style of run changes, the usage of the position changes. So there's a schematic tweak to maximize what Ben does. Hopefully you can offset some of that by saying, hey, we can get more out of him in the pass game. But again, like that stuff we got to see, and he's got to earn moving into this week.
All right, here's a deeper dive into some personnel stuff that I want to get your reaction to, and this is via NFL Pro Insights. So the Commanders are running out of 11 personnel at the highest rate in the NFL, or I guess the third highest rate this year, but it would be the highest rate over the last couple seasons if it sustains. At about 65% of their 11 of their runs this season are out of 11 personnel. So if you look at it, they're top 7 in effectiveness at doing that as well. 5.8 a pop. It's been very good. Here's what I'm interested in, though. The Raiders match 11 personnel with base defense. So that's 4 DBs on the field over half the time. And it's over twice as much as any other team matches 11 personnel with base defense. It would be the highest rate of doing that since 2022. And because of that, they're only giving up 2 yards per play in base defense, which is top 10 in the league. So do you do anything differently knowing that this is an abnormal matchup in that way if you're Cliff Kingsbury, or is it good on good?
First off, a couple things here. One, small sample sizes, so one game can skew this pretty dramatically. And I'm trying to remember what New England did, but basically they have Mac Hollins as the receiver.
He doesn't wear shoes and he doesn't use utensils.
Correct. Yes. Odd guy, but a big receiver that they use in a blocking surface, right? Kind of like you would use like Puka Nacua or, insert your kind of Sean McVay derivative here in 11. So in that game, did you treat him like a tight end and match in base, right? I got to go back and watch. I don't know for sure, right? Also, situationally, will really skew that. Like if you're in the red zone, a lot of teams will stay in base because you're going to run the football, especially short yardage situations. You might stay in base because in 11, you're more likely to run the football. So that information could be skewed. But if you're going to come out and match the Washington Commanders in base defense, I say good luck, right? Because then Zach Ertz is drawing a matchup on a linebacker. You're
totally
Deebo Samuel's on a linebacker. Like if that's their plan, which seems ridiculous, and I don't think they'll do that versus this team because that's just not smart. I think you just rip them apart in the pass game standpoint. You say, hey, we'll find a way to max protect, get Connor Lee or whoever the right tackle is, some chip help on Max Crosby, and let these other guys eat and win their one-on-one matchups. I think that's exactly how I would handle it, quite honestly. And obviously you still have to run the football to deload the offensive line a little bit, but I'm letting that thing rip.
Yeah. So that fast forward a month and I'll be curious to see what those numbers look like, but it is, we're talking about over 100 plays over 2 games and they've done plenty of it. Yeah, that's good insight. And I'll be curious to see how they operate in that regard. Going to be a fun matchup. The Raiders coming to town. This is a team with Tom Brady, a part of the ownership group, with high expectations in the AFC West to be competitive. You've got Pete Carroll that they could have, by the way, kind of punted and rebuilt this year. They did the opposite of that. They went and got a veteran quarterback to sling it around in Geno Smith. They brought in a winning coach in Pete Carroll. They spent a bunch of money to lure Chip Kelly as their OC. They still have Patrick Graham, who's a longtime quality defensive coordinator. On special teams, they've got a really good punter in A.J. Cole, former Alabama star, and they've got a kicker who's outstanding and Daniel Carlson as well. So there's things about this team that are legit, and this is a tough matchup. I've said all week long, though, Logan, I just think that the rest advantage for Washington, which is the biggest it gets in the league non-bye, playing on a Thursday and then being at home 10 days later against a team flying cross-country that played on a Monday night, which the league does everything they can to avoid for good reason, is such an unbelievable advantage that I like Washington with or without Jaden Daniels to kind of survive in advance. Am I overstating that rest element?
No, I don't think so. I think that's going to be a huge deal. And I think the other thing just to point out is this offense, I mentioned it, there's like a simplistic view of it, but they have teeth, man. When you got 2 dudes who are running 4-3 that can hit you down the field and you want to play a lot of man coverage if you're Joe Wood Jr., you're exposing yourself to a little bit of risk in terms of explosive plays. And as we've talked about, explosive plays can hurt you. So I don't want to this is going to be tough. Like they got to come and play football here. But I do agree with you that like they have some things tipped in their favor. They're going to make this a little bit easier in terms of the rest. Like that's a huge deal. I think like you're coming off a mini bye. You're going to be feeling pretty good body wise. You have an extra time to install and game plan. Like that's extremely advantageous. And then they're going to get on a plane here on Friday. They played a game on Monday, had probably practice on Tuesday. They're leaving on Friday. Like that's a tough turn for them. So it's something you should definitely be able to capitalize on, especially because they're coming back out here. So I think it's a huge deal. And again, I just want to point out that even though this is this team is going through some growing pains in terms of offense and defense at the moment early in the year, like they can hurt you in both spots. And like their defensive coordinator threw a lot of zero at Drake May, and Drake May couldn't handle it. Like they have pitches here that can hurt you. So it's just about, did you plan well enough to handle it? And you have extra time, so let's take advantage of it.
All right, preview episodes always end with me asking you who's going to eat. So give me your player on offense based on the tape in the matchup, player on defense that you would be you have as your pick to click for the Commanders.
Yeah, so player who's going to eat on defense. I'm going to say whoever is playing right defensive end. I think Colton Miller's a very good player, but he's given up a couple pressures this year. And I think if you scheme him up, get a power rusher on him, like Dorrance Armstrong or Von Miller, I think there should be opportunities, especially if you handle first and second down well. And then on offense, man, it's hard for me to go with anybody but Zach Ertz, but I'm going to say Deebo Samuel. I think he'll have a big game this week just because, again, kind of the same thing, just in terms of how they play their coverages, the matchups he's going to draw, I think are going to be very advantageous for this team.
3 episodes a week. Subscribe, rate, and review to the pod. Great insight, as always, from Logan Paulsen here on Take Command. I'm Grant Paulsen saying so long and thank you. We're available wherever you get your audio, so download there. And then you can watch us on YouTube, 1067 and the Team 980 YouTube pages. Big thanks to our producer, Evan O'Brien. For Logan, I'm Grant saying so long.